Chapter 1 unfolds on a winter evening when the city seemed to hold its breath, the kind of cold that sharpens memories and softens defenses, and on a snow-dusted bench beneath a halo of warm lamplight sat a man who had everything except the one thing he could not buy back: time. His tailored coat immaculate, his watch precise to the second, his posture trained to command rooms, yet his eyes betrayed a quiet collapse, because that day the boardroom applause had sounded hollow and the glass walls of his office reflected a stranger who had climbed every rung only to find the ladder leaning against the wrong wall, and as he stared at the frozen path he counted losses instead of profits: the first marriage that dissolved under deadlines, the daughter who learned to stop waiting for bedtime stories, the father whose voicemail he never returned until it was too late, and the air smelled faintly of pine and roasted chestnuts as a Christmas tree nearby flickered with patient cheer, mocking him gently with its insistence on hope, when a small voice cut through the snow like a bell: "Mister, are you crying?" And he looked up startled, instinctively wiping his cheek as if tears were a breach of contract, and there stood a boy bundled in red, cheeks pink with winter, eyes bright with a sincerity untempered by strategy, holding a paper bag with a cookie peeking out like a peace offering. And the man almost smiled before remembering he had forgotten how, and he shook his head because denial had become second nature. But the boy stepped closer, boots crunching, and said with solemn generosity, "It's okay. Grown-ups cry when their hearts are tired," a sentence so simple it struck like a verdict, and the man felt something uncoil inside him, and before he could deflect with humor or authority the boy held out the cookie and added, "Here, this helps," and the man accepted it not because he wanted sugar but because refusing kindness felt heavier than accepting it, and as he broke the cookie in half without thinking, habits of sharing he did not remember learning, the boy grinned as if a deal had been sealed. And then came the sentence that would reorder the evening and perhaps more, spoken not as a joke but as a perfectly reasonable solution to a visible problem: "Don't cry, mister. You can borrow my mom." And the men laughed then, a real laugh that surprised them both, the sound echoing against the snow-laden branches, and the boy nodded, satisfied, because laughter was progress, and moments later a woman approached along the path, her steps measured, her smile curious, wearing a coat that suggested warmth rather than wealth, and she apologized lightly for her son's boldness, though her eyes softened when she saw the man's expression, and the boy defended himself with earnest logic, explaining that his mom made things better, that she listened and made soup and fixed broken things with tape and patience, and the man found himself saying thank you to a stranger for raising a child who believed repair was possible, and they sat together on the bench, not as roles but as people, as the woman introduced herself and the boy insisted on names and stories, and the man, who introduced himself simply, shedding titles like a heavy overcoat, listened as the woman spoke of teaching and of mornings that started too early and of joy stitched into ordinary days, and he spoke too, cautiously at first, about a job that rewarded speed and punished stillness, about winning and losing in numbers that blurred into meaninglessness, about the day's meeting where a younger version of himself would have celebrated a merger while an older version felt only the absence it created, and the boy interrupted to ask if being a boss meant you could choose to go home early, and the man answered honestly that sometimes the hardest thing to choose was enough, and the woman nodded as if this were a truth she taught without slides or spreadsheets, and snow fell thicker, insulating their small triangle from the city's noise, and the tree lights reflected in the man's eyes as he realized he had not checked his phone once, that no one had missed him yet, that the world had not ended because he sat and listened, and the boy told a story about a lost mitten found by a dog and declared it the best day ever, and the man felt a pang of envy for a metric that simple, and when the woman stood to leave, the boy tugged the man's sleeve and whispered that borrowing his mom meant listening, really listening, and the man promised he would remember, though he did not know how, and as they parted the woman offered a card not as a promise but as a door, and the man walked back through the park lighter, thinking not of borrowings and debts but of returns, of what he could give back if he chose differently tomorrow, and that night he sent a message he had delayed for years, and the next morning he scheduled nothing for the first hour and sat with a cup of coffee in the quiet, and he would later learn that power did not evaporate when shared, that authority could kneel and still stand tall, and that a child's courage to offer comfort could recalibrate a life, and if this moment moved you, if you believe stories can remind us who we are before titles and timelines. Stay with us, subscribe to the channel for more stories that heal, awaken, and gently dare us to choose what truly matters.